Heel to the Face podcast. Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. You can find him on Twitter at Icebreaker21. Myself, Jared Wicks, and the program on Twitter at Heel to the Face. I give you those social media handles as they revolve around our social media Smackdown segments of the week. So without further ado, let's kick things off with our Twitter question of the week.
Well, before we get to the Twitter question of the week, I was listening to the music coming back. When is Dean Ambrose coming back? Not to get too far off tangent.
He's coming back at the Greatest Royal Rumble 2 weeks ago. So that means I don't know.
I'm hoping SummerSlam. I just heard the music.
SummerSlam. You think that late?
Well, his timetable from injury was like 8 to 9 months. So I was just thinking about it because I know we were playing Dean Ambrose's music, and I'm like,
yes.
Where the hell's he been lately? I feel like it's been, the injury's been a while.
So Backlash is in the rearview mirror. A pay-per-view in which saw many people posting, very popular on social media this week, posting people leaving the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey during the main event of Backlash. Chance of boring, but more importantly, I felt being there that people were leaving not necessarily because the match was boring, because they just didn't want to see Roman Reigns wins in person. We're all there. It was just late. That was the issue. It was just getting really late, and the match didn't have a ton of meaning to it. So if you missed the end of it, it was no big deal. You could hear about it. You didn't miss anything grand, I guess is the best way to put it. Dean Ambrose didn't come back during the match and cost Roman Reigns the match or anything that would have really made it so that match should have been on last. No real reason for that match to be the main event because nothing happened.
You're either going to find out on Monday Night Raw or Tuesday Night SmackDown, or if you want to wait a few days and check us out, you can we can give you the report on that on Wednesday or Thursday each week.
So now that both brands are combined, I say this not as a watcher on the WWE Network, but as a ticket buyer, somebody who goes to these events. What would you like to see on a WWE pay-per-view? Because not just the fact that, the length of the cards or anything like that, but there was a lot of people I didn't see being in Newark, New Jersey. For example, I did not see either tag team champions, Raw or SmackDown. I did see, Elias and all them just because they wanted to throw them out there for a segment, but no matches for Bobby Roode, no matches for Elias, no matches for the Bludgeon Brothers. No matches for, there's probably even more. Finn Balor. Finn Balor's a very popular star right now. And, it's one thing, obviously, back in the day, if you went to a SmackDown-only pay-per-view, you're not expecting to see a Raw guy. But this is everybody. Finn Balor is healthy. He's feuding with all the people that are on this pay-per-view, and yet he's not on the card. I don't see him. He's not on a dark match, none of that stuff.
I didn't like that. Finn Balor should have been on the show.
The question is, with everything, what would you like to see? 2.5 hour pay-per-view, similar to what we saw back in the day, start at 8 o'clock, over by about 10:45. So the next pay-per-view can start right on time at 11 o'clock Eastern, with the least amount of matches, meaning we would have had to have less matches than we had. We would have had to maybe even, get rid of one of the title matches, maybe get rid of one of that segment that had Elias. To keep it under 11 o'clock, we would have had to get rid of that segment.
That was a waste of time.
So they wouldn't even been on the card. So
I love Elias, but I thought that segment was just annoying.
So we would have had to eliminate something, that segment, I guess. Matches is one thing, so I guess you could say segments because that's not a match, it's a segment. So in order to keep under the 11 o'clock hour, we would have had to have less segments, less matches. Or would you like to see what we did, still with less matches? Obviously I mentioned, we didn't see Finn Balor in a match. We didn't see Dolph Ziggler in a match. So there were still a lot of people we didn't see compete, but the pay-per-view was about 3.5 hours long. Or would you like it to go over the 4-hour mark? Everything be SummerSlam, everything be the Royal Rumble, and everybody possible be on the card. Every woman be on the card. Sasha Banks wasn't on the card. All, WrestleMania style, SummerSlam style, Survivor Series style. Pretty much if you're healthy, we're going to find a place for you on this card. Especially if you're a big person. For example, Sasha Banks and Finn Balor are both big names. They're both healthy. They both were not on the card. So, with that being said, what would you like to see? Before we give away the results, I'll ask you, Brandon, what would your ideal pay-per-view length be in order of time and matches?
All right, so I went 3.5 hours, less matches.
Now, so what we saw, what Backlash was.
Yes, and here's the thing. I don't mind it, but here's the thing. I would make a slight adjustment. I know how you mentioned like 10:30, 10:45 would be like a good finish. Do the pay-per-view at 7. I know we do have the the kickoff shows. Make the official start time of the pay-per-view for the Backlash and all these other non-big 4 pay-per-views. Make it 7 o'clock, and then if you roll over, it's like a 10. Maybe it is 10:30. Maybe it's 10:15. That's fine, and then people can then you don't have to worry about especially you driving home at 10:15.
But I feel that even if you move the time earlier, people are still going to after WrestleMania is a long pay-per-view. We've talked about that. But I feel, people, they just adjust to the new time. Meaning, if it's now 10:15, they're going to be like, well, it's getting pretty late. It's 10:15. They're not going to be like, well, it could, like WrestleMania, for example, goes on to midnight. Nobody was like, hey, it's not midnight yet. We're doing pretty good.
I don't think
they're like,
I
it's
wouldn't
still
think so
11.
much.
So I think 10 would still be like, they would just adjust to the fact that, hey, this is still pretty late.
I think a lot of
and it's still pretty long.
A lot of people have that normal 9 to 5 schedule. I know during the day I work like a 9 to 5 myself. Me personally, like 11 o'clock for me is like, all right, time for bed. Like, so like when Raw goes to like 10:15, 11:15, 11:20 sometimes, then I'm like, ugh. To me, 11 o'clock is late. I mean, a lot of us folks out there work the 9 to 5 schedule. I think to be honest with you, I think 11 o'clock is the cutoff. So to me, if a show's done at 10:30, I'm good with that. 10:30, it's like watching a basketball game. Watching like Syracuse basketball. I mean, if they're done, if they do the game sometimes runs so 7 p.m. start, even an 8 o'clock start. You're done by 9, 10 o'clock. That's fine. I'm good with that. 10:30 at the absolute latest. That's why I like SmackDown more than I do Raw. In many aspects.
Because it's over early.
It's over by 10. So guess what? I can do what I need to do and go to bed.
Yeah. But another reason I like SmackDown more than Raw is because overall it's
2 hours.
A shorter program.
It's 2 hour shows. Yeah, yes. I know. You love your 2 hour show guy. I know.
So it's a shorter program itself. So even if you started at 7, I would still be like, well, I hope this is over by 10, because it's a shorter program. I'm in the 67% of our audience that voted and said 2.5 hours with the least amount of matches. So what that means is you're going to have the typical length, what we did, going back, 3-4 years ago, where a pay-per-view starts at 8, ends at about 10:30, so 2.5 hours of a pay-per-view event. Least matches means that we're going to have the Backlash card with probably one less match than we had, which means, I talk about the people we didn't see, we'd see even less people. But the cool thing about that is, I think it really hypes up the big pay-per-views like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, even Money in the Bank. I feel Money in the Bank is starting to inch its way into, that King of the Ring slot, turning it back into maybe the big 5 pay-per-views.
Yeah, I can see
Money
that,
in the Bank is, it's not in the big pay-per-views, but it's the biggest in-your-house pay-per-view, I would say. Of all the non-big pay-per-views, it's the biggest one.
Yeah, at least it's the one most talked about.
It's got something going on, like the Royal Rumble Survivor Series. It's got a match that's dedicated to it, and it's not like Hell in a Cell.
It's a staple now.
Yeah,
it really is a staple.
Yeah.
So I mean, you make a fair point. I was actually thinking that. I was like, it's got the potentiality to be a big 5 someday.
So, these Backlash pay-per-views, Extreme Rules, etc. I'm fine with seeing less people. There's a perk to it too. I know a lot of people say that pay-per-views should be a bigger deal than Monday Night Raw, but they are a bigger deal because you see the matches. So people who do go to Raw, it'll give you a reason to go see both. Meaning if you ever have tickets to a pay-per-view and a Raw the night after, you're like, well, why would I go to both? Obviously, I'm going to the pay-per-view. That's better. But it gives you a reason to go to Raw because you might see more people, but the pay-per-views will have more important matches. So I'm okay with the pay-per-views being shorter than Raw, being the length of a SmackDown, being, 2 hours and 15 minutes long as they have the importance. I mean, this is how in-your-house pay-per-views started. The first in-your-house pay-per-views, when they kept the numbers in-your-house 1 in Syracuse, in-your-house 2, in-your-house, 17, or whatever the numbers they gave before they finally just turned it into, Backlash, No Mercy, what we're used to. When they had that in-your-house with that old house entranceway, they were only an hour and 40 minutes long. They had 4 or 5 matches on the card. They were all surrounded by a big main event because they realized, we still want WrestleMania to be WrestleMania. And that was back when WrestleMania was under 3 hours. We want SummerSlam to be SummerSlam. So these in-your-house pay-per-views were just supposed to be what the equivalent of, early 90s Saturday Night main events. They were supposed to be in, current days we're used to UFC. They were UFC fight nights. Because, the UFC has the pay-per-views, UFC 201, UFC 210, and then you have these UFC fight nights on a Friday night that's like, well, this isn't a pay-per-view, but it's still a bigger deal. It's still something that's worth watching if you're a fan of this. These matches are pretty hyped, and that's
for me, the only downside to that is you do have really big caliber guys off the, guys and gals off the show.
But that keeps storylines fresh because if you keep them off, I mean,
not necessarily because
I know we don't want to see a Brock Lesnar situation, but obviously it would be great if only one of the 2 titles is defended on a pay-per-view, maybe, so that you still do have that freshness. Because Brock Lesnar's not going to be the champion forever. So when Brock Lesnar's not the champion anymore, we can still incorporate a little of the specialness of the belts by not having them defended all the time.
You can still have qualifying matches too on the pay-per-views.
Yeah, you can have a qualifying match for the next pay-per-view.
I like those, because the reason why I like to have, I'm in the middle between the 2.5 and the 4+. I'm in the middle because you don't need to have too many. I don't need to have Breezango on the show. I don't care about that.
We don't need to have a battle royal just for the sake of a battle royal to fit everybody on the card.
I'm not giving everybody a participation trophy. That's not what I mean. Because if you're doing a 4.5 hour show, so to speak, that's a participation trophy to me. A 3.5 hour show is because there's so many talented superstars. Like Finn Balor. Like that was the only bad thing that I think WWE messed up. I think Finn Balor should have been on the pay-per-view. He was healthy, like we talked about. So that's why this, that 3 hour, that 3.5 hour, frame is good for me because it's not too long, but it's long enough where you're getting quality matches. You're getting you're getting the quality names on there, and you're not having these stupid segments like Backlash. Yes, Backlash was different because they had a stupid segment where I love
and it was in order to get more people on the card because they realized there was a lot of people not on the card.
Exactly.
So they're like, can we try to get like Elias on the card at least?
Yeah, and to me that part
and
of it I don't
on the card.
You can do it the right way for 3 to 3.5 hours without doing something stupid. You at that point put Finn Balor in a match. Don't put him in a match against Rusev. Something like that. Don't throw.
Yeah,
him
I would rather just have that segment cut, no match entirely, and then that gives the Raw, and that keeps Finn Balor fresh. He's healthy, but we don't need to see him like every pay-per-view.
Yeah, but the fans want to see him. The fans want to see Finn. He's one of the big names in the industry right now.
Well, then go to another event. That's what keeps you going to more and more events. We don't need every event to be the one and only event.
People pay good money for pay-per-views, though.
Yes. You do pay good money for a pay-per-view. So it's like the trade-off. Like I said, you go to Monday Night Raw, you get to see more people, less matches, or less importance. You go to a pay-per-view, you see, it's
not going to hurt my feelings if Rhino and Heath Slater aren't on. It's not, no offense, but it's not going to hurt my feelings for those guys not to be on. But for me, as a paying customer, if I'm going to Backlash, like I know you were there, I would want to see Finn Balor at Backlash.
I look at it like this, let's look at a Major League Baseball term. During the season, they have a expanded roster. Let's say in September, they have this expanded roster. Those games don't matter, so you get to see everybody. You get to see, they do matter, but they don't matter to the extent. They're Monday Night Raws. They don't matter to a large extent. Now the playoffs themselves, they shorten up the roster. It's only the best of the best. That's what I want to see on pay-per-views. I want to see the playoffs, the best of the best.
See, the postseason for me is like
pay-per-views to me are the postseason in WWE. I only want to see the best of the best.
I wouldn't say it like that. I would say, to me, the way I look at it is the postseason, like the postseason, like in baseball. To me, the equivalent for wrestling will be the Big Four, or maybe the Big Five. Because to me, that's the other ones are kind of like, to me, it's like a great series, so to speak. It's like right now you have Red Sox, Yankees. It's like, it's a great rivalry. To me, that's a great series of games. So like Backlash to me would be like a solid series, so to speak, like a solid pay-per-view. To me, the Big Four or Big Five is the equivalent of postseason. That's the way I look at it.
So would you rather see WrestleMania shorter with the best of the best and Backlash longer with more scrub matches?
I would like to see I would say, except for the Big Four. The Big Four would be the only exception of pay-per-view being 4 hours, and I'm okay with it.
All right.
Every other pay-per-view, 3 to 3.5 hours.
Either way, so none of us here in the studio, and there was a few 16% of you that said that you would be fine with every pay-per-view being 4+ hours, and I don't feel that you watch any baseball or basketball or any other sports, and you literally only watch wrestling, and it's summertime, so get out of your house, because if you're somebody who wants to see 4.5 hour pay-per-views every single month, you got way too much time on your hands. I'm sorry about that. So let's get to our tweets of the week. Brandon, we'll start with you. What is your tweet of the week?
All right, I'm going back to the well again. WWE creative humor, per usual. Kind of what we were talking about. Too many hours, too many shows going on. So WWE creative humor put out a great tweet, as they normally do. We are 6 weeks away from Money in the Bank, after coming off a span of 20 pay-per-views in 3 weeks. Now, that was a little over-exaggerated, of course, but I get the sarcasm. It really did feel like that. We had a lot of shows going on, because the greatest Royal Rumble was a pay-per-view. Backlash. What was the other one we had?
Fastlane, I believe, was like March 12th.
There was a lot going on.
See, it's funny because a couple years ago, when baseball was in Toronto and Madison Square Garden was busy as well, if you remember WrestleMania 20 and WrestleMania 18, those WrestleManias were earlier than usual. Normally WrestleMania is like March 31st, April 1st, around that weekend. But the WrestleMania 18 in Toronto and WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Garden were both like March 14th, and I want to say one was March 15th, like in the middle of the month of March. So when you see that Fastlane, which is the pay-per-view before WrestleMania this year, was at a time similar to like 2 days prior that a WrestleMania was in the past, that's how you know you're really shrinking them together. Back in the day, a few times WrestleMania was at, March 12th. Well, and now we're having a pay-per-view before WrestleMania.
Yeah, back in the day,
late in the calendar.
There was only so many pay-per-views back in the day. Now you get a pay-per-view like every couple
Well, I mean,
weeks.
even in the days when he had all the pay-per-views, like 2004, 2002.
But it was a month apart, though.
Yeah.
It was like you still get 4 weeks.
We were still a little less. Normally we get that, and that's what I used to like about WrestleMania. You'd have a big gap. No Way Out would be in the middle of February, and then March would be completely clean, and then maybe WrestleMania is March 31st. Most likely it's April 1st.
Yeah,
but
so
either way, it's completely clean
like
month.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
6, 7
now,
weeks. You're good.
Now it's like we still had a pay-per-view literally the month before. Like this year was April 8th, but it could have very well been March 31st, and Fastlane could have been March 12th, and they would have treated it like that's normal.
To me, it's too many pay-per-views in a short time.
Too many pay-per-views in a short time. We do get a little bit of a break, so maybe these Raws and Smackdowns will pump themselves up, be a little bit better. I'm hoping so because I'm attending one in a couple weeks. So hopefully we get some matches. Speaking of a guy who's been defending his belt and treating Monday Night Raw like pay-per-view events is Seth Rollins. We saw him put on that pay-per-view caliber match, which goes kind of to what I was saying about Backlash being a little bit shorter, because then you get to see things like Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor on Monday Night Raw, and Finn Balor's not even on the Backlash card, so it kind of spreads things around. That was an A+ match they had 2 weeks ago on Raw for the IC title.
Then you put Seth Rollins versus Mojo. Yeah.
But then you have Seth Rollins versus The Miz at the pay-per-view, which stole the show.
By the way, not to cut you off. Even Mojo. Mojo Rawley. I'm not a big fan of his, honestly, but that was still a good match because Seth Rollins puts on good matches.
Seth Rollins does come on put a match. That's where I lead to the tweet of the week from BCAFC Mark, better known as Mark H. That's his Twitter handle.
Not Mark Henry.
He says he has a Raw graphic, typical to what we see on Monday Night Raw on the USA Network every Monday night, and it says Seth Rollins tonight versus a broom, and his comment says, in which I agree, would still be match of the night. And
I agree.
Because we've seen Seth Rollins just tear it up.
And it's funny. That was right to my point because Seth Rollins can make Mojo Rawley look good. So what does that tell you?
So that's our tweets of the week, and that is our Twitter question of the week. So if you are joining us on YouTube, join our regular podcast as well as our social media segment of the week, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at Heel to the Face.